everyone, and welcome to another video. I'm Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the manga that I got for this month of August 2020. And I know I say this every month, but oh my god, you guys, there is a lot to show off. Actually, book-wise, the book count isn't that much higher than normal, but there's some pretty exciting things to talk about. There's some unusual things here. And oh my goodness, there's some thick books to get into as well. So hopefully there's a pretty wide range of stuff, pretty eclectic mix. Hopefully you guys will enjoy all of it. But rather than spend too long on this intro, I'll just get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. So first up isn't even manga yet. We haven't gotten to that point. But this is a doujin work that I picked up via my Japanese proxy. And I picked it up because, one, I'm a huge fan of this series, and two, I love the art for this and I love the concept for this. So this is the release of The Whirling Ways of Stars That Pass. And if you can't tell from this artwork, it is a Full Metal Alchemist doujin work. And it's interesting. It's like an accordion release. And this is an illustrated work which features artwork of the arcana, tarot cards, but with commentaries on each card, and then each artwork being related to Full Metal Alchemist and why the character that was chosen for that card and what the card means. And oh my goodness, it's so cool. I love this. When I discovered that this was a thing, I knew that I had to, I'm not really into tarot or anything like that, but I just love the idea of this sort of really cool, creative, original work. And of course, as a huge Full Metal Alchemist fan, I couldn't not have it. So here we have 10 art pieces, so for 10 of the cards, and then just some extra. But then on the other side, we have the next pieces. So it does actually talk about all the major arcana, some which you may be familiar with if you follow tarot. Well, you would definitely be familiar with if you follow tarot, but even if you don't, even things like Escaflowne and anime and media and that references tarot, not always correctly, but it does reference tarot all of the time, especially if you need something a little bit spiritual or eclectic, witchy, then this tends to be the thing. But dang it, I love this art style, and I love just the idea of this. And then we have the actual creator comments, and you can see there's Japanese as well as English, so I can actually read it, which is super cool. And these are, if you want to know more about who was responsible, the creators, they also had a bunch of other physical merchandise that they released in a bundle with this, things like a card carrier, like a card pass, and a tote bag, and I think a shirt or something. I can't remember. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff. Really expensive. This was pretty pricey on its own. But if you wanted the whole merch deal, there's a lot of stuff there, and it was pricey. So if you're not willing to pay for that, then don't, maybe avoid it. But this is a cool doujin, and I love it. Really, really happy to have it. Really, really cool and quite unique. So yeah, this is The Whirling Ways of Stars That Pass. Next, I got a Japanese manga. This one I got because I was informed that it contained a extra. So like with most Japanese manga that I purchase, I buy it for the extra. I don't buy it for the book necessarily. This is the 7th and final volume of Our Precious Conversations, or here it says The Precious Talk of Me and You. This is by Robiko, so the same mangaka as My Little Monster, which is a quite fun tale of opposites attract, like really weirdo romances. Robiko kind of thrives at. That has an anime adaptation. This one is released digitally and is finished. I don't know if the digital volumes from Kodansha have finished being released, but I know the Simulpub release, which I was following via Crunchyroll, has finished. It's only like 34, 35 chapters, so 7 volumes. But this came with a special illustration book, and as a Robiko fan, it's nothing like super amazing or anything, but I really liked this little story. I would hope that this one day gets print, because I don't know how well My Little Monster did, but Robiko is a pretty solid mangaka. I liked these two characters and their personalities and their relationship. If you don't know anything about this series, one, I highly recommend you pick up the digital volumes. I do think it's worth your money, especially if you liked the author's previous works. But it's the story of two teenage kids, two high schoolers who end up taking the same train home on a regular basis, and the girl has kind of always loved the boy from afar, but the boy has kind of a twisted mentality of like what relationships are and how girls and boys should interact and things like that, which is influenced by his relationships with his family, interpersonal relationships. So he's kind of he's a stupid know-it-all teenage boy and very quickly realizes like, oh wait, maybe that was wrong and I'm being an idiot, and I don't realize that this really like beautiful, popular, like likable girl somehow is interested in me. But she approaches him whilst they're waiting for the train, and they start a conversation, and it's about the weird conversations that they have, and then they're slowly close, like the closeness of their relationship over time until romance blossoms, as it were. It's fun. I like the series a lot. The art book is cute. I wouldn't necessarily like go out and buy it, this volume, if you're just wanting the art book, because it is, I mean, it's an extra from a manga. It's not like hugely big or anything. Think of the stuff that you get, like the art book from Devil's Line or whatever. It's that sort of level of stuff. But yeah, fun series, cute series, sweet series, and lovely artwork from Robiko, as per always. So yeah, happy to have this one finally, because I ordered this at the beginning of the year, and then I was about to have it shipped out, and then they're like, the global pandemic happened, your shipping option is no longer available. Do you want to wait, or do you want to pay like a little bit extra to get it sooner? And I was like, well, I'm gonna wait. Stupid past me, like shipping should open up soon again. No, still no. EMS still not running to Australia, even though Australia, I mean, the East Coast is locked down, so I can't say we're doing well necessarily, but where I live, we don't, but it's it's complete, like, no EMS to Australia whatsoever, no Japan Post, like air parcel stuff, so I had to pay the extra last month to finally get my book. And it took way long to get to me as well, because, well, even though it's a quote-unquote fast shipping option, nothing's fast right now. Understandably, but like, man, patience. Next, we're going to start with the actual manga. And as I said, there's a lot to get to. So, first one is a older release. I bought this one secondhand from... Did I buy this one? I can't remember. I bought it via my US proxy because you can get it relatively cheap, but not shipped internationally. But this is the second of the 2 books that Tokyo Pop's Passion Fruit line put out before they stopped that. And this is Junko Kawakami's Galaxy Girl, Panda Boy. This is a short story collection about different relationships, basically. Majority of the story, so there's the first series, the first story, which is the titular one, Galaxy Girl and Panda Boy, which is about a girl who has grown up in like this a commune a commune society, and her relationship with the people there and her family and one of the other kids there. Next is this story, I don't remember what it's called, The Laid Back Person I Will Never Forget. It's about a boyfriend and girlfriend. The guy's a surfer and like really laid back and not very emphatic with how he expresses his emotions, and his girlfriend is kind of upset that she never knows what he's thinking, or it never seems he's as enthusiastic with the relationship as she is. Pretty solid. And then the rest of the book is dedicated to the various chapters of Club Hurricane, which is probably, I mean, it's the most developed of these stories. And this is a story about siblings, twins, boy and a girl, who get dropped off at this, I guess, community in the mountains, which is basically for like wayward kids. And there's a bunch of other young people there who have various family issues. And it's about coming to terms with being in terrible situations that aren't your fault and having to face your family's choices and divorce and abuse cycles and lots of different things. It's pretty good. The brother is the main character. His sister is mute, and so she doesn't communicate. Well, she wasn't born mute, but since being dropped there, she doesn't talk to anyone, not until the very end. It's quite good. I think there's a lot of really interesting ideas, and that could have definitely been developed to an even longer story, I feel. Really interesting little book. Not like a must read, but if you're wanting some josei stuff that's a little bit older, that's from an era when josei was not popular, it's interesting to see what they were testing the waters with as well. But yeah, I liked this book quite a bit, and I'm happy to finally own both Passion Fruit imprint books, because they're quite nicely well done, considering this is an older Tokyo Pop, like a later in their life Tokyo Pop release, when the wheels were kind of beginning to fall off and things were kind of not going super duper well. Considering the age of the book, it's pretty perfect condition, basically me. But yeah, Galaxy Girl and Panda Boy, if it sounds interesting, then maybe hunt it down. You can find it for very cheap. Very cheap. Next, for the standard volume stuff, I'm going to talk about my Viz releases. First is the most recent volume of Requiem of the Rose King, volume 12. I didn't pick this up when it initially came out just because I had other things I was prioritizing at the time, but I adore this manga so much. I love it. This is a Shakespearean reimagining of Henry VI and Richard III, based off of the plays, but also like actual history, War of the Roses stuff, by Ayakano. It's wonderful. I highly recommend it. It is a shoujo title in Japan, but is not marketed as such here for, I think, obvious reasons as to it doesn't fit what I think a lot of people would regard as a shoujo beat title, maybe. But it is phenomenal, fabulous. I love it. It's got a huge amount of drama and tragedy and foreboding and kind of weird supernatural twists that you don't know whether are true or just part of the larger delusion of these characters. And Richard is such a compelling character, which is, I mean, the play that Shakespeare wrote, Richard III, was kind of what made people interested in this character, who was a real person. Like, these were real people historically. But people didn't really care about the War of the Roses, and especially not Richard III. Historically, we know that we can surmise that he had his nephews killed in order to become king, and was nobody liked him. He was a bit of a bastard. And then Shakespeare wrote a play about him, as he does, and he made him this theatrical villain, but in an understandable way. And even now, there are Richard III stans that like just love this guy who literally had his nephews murdered to take the throne. But they're like, no, they woobified Shakespeare. Woobified. Well, he didn't, but all of the fans did. They woobified Richard III, and it's just like such an interesting thing. Like, he's one of the most beloved and like followed and documented and like quote unquote people's favorite historical figure now. And a huge part of that is because of Shakespeare's influence. I just find it so funny. Like, this is truly art influencing the real world and people, like how art influences people. But regardless of that, Richard III in this iteration is also really compelling, really interesting character. Much more likable and understanding than real world Richard. Yeah. Highly, highly, highly recommend this series, especially if you like political thrillers. And I don't want to like liken it to Game of Thrones, because it's honestly not that, and I like it a lot more than that. But it has, if you're into that kind of action, medieval, historical fiction stuff, then Requiem of the Rose King is absolutely worth reading. For the rest of my Viz standard stuff, they are Shoujo Beat titles. The first one being a debut, one that I didn't really know much about, but when I heard the editor and the translator, the whole team talking about it as they were working on it, I knew that I had to read this, and I have, and I adored it. I will put up my first impressions video of this soon, like hopefully next week, because this is one that I think everyone should read. Men, women, young people especially. It is so good. But that is Not Your Idol by Aoi Makino. This is also, it's called Sayonara Miniskirt in Japanese. And if you're not familiar with what this title is, this is the story of a teenage girl who in middle school was part of an idol group. And one day she was attacked by a fan at a meet and greet. And after having to go through this, basically was confronted by the reality that despite being the victim, people pushed the responsibility of what happened onto her. Victim blaming, basically. Took away her power, and she saw the toxicity of the industry and the society that she was in, and the just broken expectations of people on young women, primarily on their femininity, and like the expectations of like how girls should act and look and whatever. But then whenever something bad happens to them, whether that be physical or sexual assault, then they are blamed for those same exact things. It is, oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, this was called a feminist shoujo manga. Holy shit, they were not kidding. And don't let that word scare you away either. I think feminism for some people has become this dirty word of not being, like, I don't know, warped in some way. But this is directly confronting the ideas that of like the toxicity of gender expectations, victim blaming when things like assault and sexual assault especially are brought up or revealed, and just how broken and uncompassionate and terrible it can be for people who are experiencing this, who have to confront this, and who get blamed for things that they, like, it's not their fault. A victim is always a victim regardless of what's happening to them. I'm gonna go into it in my actual first impressions video, but regardless, I loved this. I think everyone should owe it to themselves to read this book. The synopsis and the first volume of this is about this teenage girl who becomes an idol, and that whole event happens to her. So she quits and just kind of resumes her normal life. She changes her hair, like her outfit. She only dresses in the pants uniform, so she doesn't wear the miniskirt at school. She moved, and she just wants to regain control of her life, live her life outside of the scrutiny of the fans and the industry that she before felt so comfortable in, and kind of come to terms with her new fear of guys, because prior to this she was really trusting of everyone, and she didn't even think about how the potential she could be a victim to somebody. And now, so she has a lot of issues with the way that guys treat girls, basically. That's the sexism and toxicity in society, the patriarchy. So when she's at school, there's an announcement that girls should go home in groups or with like one of the male students, because there's been someone like a groper or an attacker or something spotted around the school grounds, or like stalking the students coming and going from school. And so nobody takes her seriously. Nobody treats her like a girl because she does have the short hair. She's not personable. She's very standoffish. She's very irate, and doesn't get along with anyone. But one of her classmates, who's on the judo team, he's the only one who kind of quote unquote sees her as a girl, and offers to help her when things aren't going well, and offers to walk her home. And so she's starting to finally kind of come to terms with the fact that it's not all men. Every guy on the earth isn't an abuser. He's not going to attack you. He's not going to do this, that, or whatever. He's not being male isn't inherently a dangerous thing, but coming to terms with the fact that rationally in your brain you might know that, but not being able to fully accept it until you do kind of meet better people in your life who don't blame you for things, or who do become your friends without expectation and whatever else. Anyway, so she befriends this guy, but her attacker from the event from the year before hasn't been caught, so there's a big mystery as to where he is. He might still be stalking her. Her new identity has been leaked to her, so she knows that somebody knows who she is. And so there's a big mystery of like who it is. Is it this guy that she's been talking to? Is it someone else? There's obviously a lot of unrest with her classmates, her female classmates as well, in how they don't like how she acts, and they, just perpetuating stereotypes and things like that. It's so good. It's so good. Read it. I don't know how many volumes are out in Japan. I don't know how long it's going to be, but as of right now, I love this. It quickly jumped to the absolute top of my like favorite new releases. And yeah, do yourself the favor and read Not Your Idol. Even if shoujo manga is not usually your thing, even if you don't think you're the target audience for this, this mangaka has a lot to say, and she says it really well. Who knows as to whether it'll still be successful in subsequent volumes, but this first volume was really good. Next is, as I said, another Shoujo Beat title. We have Prince Freya, Volume 2 by Keiko Ishihara. This is the story of a young teenage girl who has to assume the identity of the recently deceased prince of her nation in order to prevent nudity, in order to prevent war between her country and neighboring kingdoms. And yeah, it's one of those series that's, you know, about a young girl who doesn't really have much oh my gosh, so much going on in this volume. Who doesn't know very much about herself or the world, and isn't very confident, gaining confidence and becoming a stronger person through this whole having to become a different literally become a different person in the name of like the greater good or whatever. Discovering yourself by being someone else is kind of how I generally phrase these types of stories. I like it a lot. It's not like my favorite series, but it's fun. I don't think my first impressions of this has come out yet, but I have filmed it. It's exactly what it needs to be. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the best thing coming out at Shoujo Beat. I just gushed endlessly about Not Your Idol. But even some of the other titles that have been going on longer in a similar genre, I would say are stronger. But it's exactly what I think anyone who's looking for this type of story, it is exactly that. It follows all of the expectations, all of the cliches, all of the tropes. And that's not a bad thing. Like, it does what it needs to do extremely effectively, but I wouldn't say it's like groundbreaking or amazing or everyone needs to read it or it's like reinventing the wheel. I definitely wouldn't say it's better than like Yona, which is also coming out. I would also say like overall, there's only 3 or 4 volumes out of this in Japanese, and I don't know how long it's going to be. I said this in my first impression video. It feels like it's going to be closer to a Dawn of the Arcana length versus a Snow White with the Red Hair or Yona of the Dawn length, and I think that's good. Like it doesn't need to be this sprawling large story. It's got a couple important characters, a couple important conflicts, and it can address those and do that, and that's all it needs to be, right? But just like none of these things are complaints or bad marks against the series. It's, as I said, kind of exactly what the series needs to be, and I do recommend you read it if that sounds like your thing. It's been a pretty good time so far. Next is another Shoujo Beat new release title. Exciting, because this is one that is very few and far between, and that is Kaze Hikaru Volume 28 by Taiko Watanabe. This is a josei historical fiction romance about a young girl called Sei, who pretends to be a boy in order to join the Shinsengumi and get revenge for her father and brother's murder, and who falls in love with a very prominent swordsman, historical figure, Sokoto Oji, and like just hangs out with some actual historical Shinsengumi guys, and it's a historical fiction. It follows the events of the Shinsengumi and the unrest between the isolationists and the Bakufu and all that very closely, but also has like cross-dressing romance, a Mulan-esque sort of story. It's good. It's good. This one is, whenever I get a new volume of this, or whenever I get a volume of this, I mentioned that this is one of those titles, Shagakukan titles, where I am 100% certain, and other people have, I think, confirmed this for me, that Viz is contractually obligated to finish this series. So regardless of how poorly it sells, it will be done. It will get done at some point. But in saying that, we only get one volume a year, which we're on volume 28. And there is 44 volumes in all. So I will be an old lady by the time this is finished. And I really hope, it did just finish last year, so I know this isn't a big seller for Viz, but even if you put out 2 a year, I know you don't want to focus your resources on this title that nobody buys, but like, please, I want to see the end of this series sometime in my lifetime, right? It's really good if you like historical romance series, and you like actual Japanese history and Shinsengumi stories and Mulan-esque stories. Yeah, check this one out. It's harder to recommend because a lot of the older volumes are out of print. And as I said, this is not a high priority for Viz, so I doubt they're getting another reprint, so you're maybe going to have to hunt down a couple volumes, but it is well worth the effort. Yeah, Kaze Hikaru, pretty great. And an unusual entry when we look at what josei we normally get in English. Compared to some of that, this is pretty unique. But yeah, it's great. It's great. So next, for the standard trim size manga, I have a yen press title. Well, I have a couple of yen press titles. The first one being an older title. I did buy this, or an older title, an older release, an older book. I did buy this new. But it is, from my understanding, out of print everywhere. I found it in Kinokuniya. Well, I didn't go to Kinokuniya because we don't have one here, but on the website they had a copy, and I think it's the last copy, so I picked it. I lucked out because I'm pretty sure this volume goes for very high prices. But so this is volume 10 of Inuboku SS, or Inuboku Secret Service, by Koko Fujiwara. If you don't, so I haven't read this manga. I have watched the anime adaptation, and I liked certain aspects of it, disliked certain aspects of it. And the entirety, it's an 11 volume series, so I'm not going to open this one up because I don't know spoilers. I don't want to spoil myself. But if you don't know the story, this is about a young girl who she lives in this like apartment building with a bunch of other people, in a trying to become more friendly. She's quite standoffish and doesn't know how to get along with people, and she has a very handsome butler, guardian guy looking after her, who has known her for a long time. And so it's about her and the other people who live in this apartment building and their daily lives. But also, all of the residents of this apartment building have a tie to yokai. They're not quite human, and they are protecting, from what I can remember, it's been a long time since I watched the show, they're protecting the, again, mundane world from supernatural threat, right? One of the major focuses is on this girl and her romantic relationship with her butler guy, who is a sexy fox dude. And then there's like a tanuki, and there's, I don't remember all of them. As I said, it has been a long time since I watched the show. And I remember not being like that invested in it, but it had a great Miyano Mamoru character. I've talked about him so much, but this is just like Well, I talked about him a lot in my anime pickups video, so watch that if you haven't. Favorite voice actor, love him. And I did like the premise of it. I thought it was interesting. And then I heard that the manga, like at one point, there's like a huge freaking 180 twist just plopped in the middle of it, and then everything changes, and you're like, what the frick? Huh? What? Oh my god. It's the meme of that escalated quickly, like times 200 from what I understand. And then it's kind of like a completely different series for a little while, and then yeah, so I'm actually really interested in reading this. And very unfortunately, Koko Fujiwara died shortly after the conclusion of this series, so this is the only one of her series that we ever got in English, and really I think I'm not that familiar with her body of work, but it's definitely her most popular title. And as a yokai fan, I wanted to try it for myself. I wanted to give it a shot. As I said, despite their not really liking the romance aspect of it between the main characters, I wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to see how if the manga was better, if I'd enjoy it more comparatively to the anime, because I didn't dislike the anime. I don't want to give that impression that I disliked it. I liked a lot of it. I just wasn't that invested in the romance aspect of it, which I from my perspective at the time, I thought was a large part of it, and I would assume it is a large part of it. Like it's part of the story, but I'd be interested to see my experience reading the manga and knowing that there's like other stuff going on and more to enjoy, versus just, yeah, having watched the anime. But yeah, Inuboku SS, I don't know a huge amount about it aside from all of that, and I have other volumes of the series coming, so I hope to read it sooner rather than later. But I picked this one up because it was the only one that I was missing, and it's also one of the harder volumes to find, and it was retail price locally, at a store that I knew was reputable. So I jumped on it. I was like, yep, thank you. And just because of the global shipping situation right now, it was the first one to get to me. So yeah, just a random volume 10 of Inuboku SS. The last of the standard trim size manga for I guess normal genres, if that makes sense, is another Yen Press title. This is volume 7 of The Case of Vanitas by Jun Mochizuki. This, it's been a while since volume 6 came out. I'm probably going to have to reread some of what's going on because I don't remember. But I really like Jun Mochizuki. I love a lot of parts of Pandora Hearts. I think it's a really solid series. This one, I think even more so, hit it out of the park right at the beginning and has only gotten better from there. This is the story of a society of like a steampunk-esque Edwardian society of vampires in France and Europe generally. We have Noe, who is our main character, who is a vampire, just living his life, going to Paris and trying to, do whatever. This is a society in which vampires aren't inherently dangerous, but there is this condition that's going around that can make them rabid and attack people indiscriminately. Generally, vampires are they're just normal people who sometimes have to drink blood. But Noe runs into a character calling himself Vanitas, who obviously is what the series is named after, and he claims that he can cure vampires of this compulsive hunger, this urge that makes them go crazy by using this book. He is not a vampire, but he's trying to save the vampire world as it was, but he's also seen as a very dangerous individual because the book that he has, like, kind of controls vampire society, and mysteries abound. Yeah, great series, love it a lot. Lot of action, a lot of really likable Mochizuki characters. It's very lush, very in itself insofar as the setting. It just revels in the beauty of this time period and this sort of genre. Yeah, I mean, I knew that I would probably like this because I enjoyed Pandora Hearts a lot. I also highly recommend Pandora Hearts. It also has that, I mean, not subtle homoeroticism or homoromanticism, if that's how you want to put it, which is kind of part and parcel with Mochizuki's stuff, but it's not like, that's not the point of the series either. You know, we got some likable male duos is what I'm gonna say. Some partnerships between guys you're gonna be invested in, but the female characters as well are great. Just really great stuff, especially if you like vampire stories. This is a pretty interesting, not twist on it because it's not wholly original, but I like it, and I like the fact it's set in France, and I like the steampunky Edwardian aspect of it. I think it just does a lot of stuff right. It appeals to me in the same way that Pandora Hearts and even Black Butler does. It knows what it's doing, and it's really beautiful to read and get invested in and be like, ooh, whenever stuff happens. And I'm not talking like romantically, I'm talking about like actual events. You get invested pretty quickly, and it's fun learning about these characters. And then it will emotionally ruin you. So that's fun. But yeah, Pandora Hearts, and if you're a fan of that one, Case Study Vanitas is definitely worth the look. It's beautiful. Look at these covers. Look at those colors. Yeah, great series. Be sure to check it out. Speaking of beautiful yen press releases and series that I adore just from the atmosphere and setting and characters, we have Volume 5 of Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri. I love this series. So yeah, I mean, I've spoken about the series a lot because I love it, and some people are buying this, but this is one of those ones that are like made for me, right? If you're going to write a manga that you're like, gee, we'll definitely buy it, it's this manga. So this is a somewhat episodic series about a innkeeper, inhuman innkeeper who invites guests to his inn and looks after them and grants their wish in exchange for a secret, their deepest, darkest secret. This particular volume focuses a lot on, we're introduced to a new character. Where is he? Well, him, but I want to, where is his face? He has a face. No. First chapter, no. There he is. Who is great. We see a lot of like fox possession and ayakashi or phantoms, yokai within their natural habitat of like tricking people and like it's very folklore-ish, and the fact that, you know, these monsters aren't here to be your friend. They're kind of like gods. They care about how much people can entertain them, humans can entertain them. There's a big focus on foxes, especially in this particular book. There's the recurring characters that we see quite often. And as I said, we are introduced to a new character who I think will show up a lot. But, ooh, man. Oh my goodness. This is my shit, right? We know this. We know that this is what you write for G, and she will be happy. She will be satisfied. She will love everything about it. And I really do. This has just perfected the atmosphere of these sorts of stories. There's just such an intriguing mystery and unsettled inhumanness of these characters and the situations, juxtaposed with the actual human characters and their kind of terrified or abhorred reaction to the immorality of these inhuman creatures that they are presented with. Oh, it's so good! It's so good. And of course the covers are so beautiful. I don't like to sell series on just the artwork, right? Because a series is so much more than that. But damn it if the artwork isn't beautiful as well. And it just the usage of blacks as well. I went just flipping through. You can see how dark and how effective the darkness is used in these panelings. Man, oh, it's so lovely. Look at that. Ugh. Wonderful. And I like gasped when I saw this page. There's just so much to love. Look how good that is. Oh my, yeah. Phantom Tales of the Night. If you're a yokai fan, yokai manga story fan like I am, if you like creepy, weird folklore and fairy tales and monster stories and like spooky ghost stories, you are doing yourself a disservice if you are not reading this manga. It is some of the best when it comes to the creepy yokai stuff, especially stuff that's being released right now. Yeah, it's my favorite and I love it. So check it out. Next, for large trim stuff, we have more Viz releases. The first one being a single volume debut that came out this month. And that is Mujiroshi, The Sign of Dreams by Naoki Urasawa in collaboration with Fujio Productions. So, okay. I really, really liked this manga, and I didn't really know what to expect. I had a suspicion that it was in a similar vein to all of the Louvre manga. Oh my god, I can't speak. All of the Louvre Gallery's manga that we've gotten so far, including Guardians of the Louvre by Jiro Taniguchi, Rohan of the Louvre by Araki, and of course, Cats of the Louvre by Taiyo Matsumoto. This is, and my suspicions were confirmed. It says right there. It's a Louvre edition, so this was somewhat of a commissioned piece for the gallery, set in the gallery to be about some of the works in the gallery and the people who work there, and with the assumption that it would be published and sold at the gallery. And up until now, with Rohan and with Jiro Taniguchi's, the Louvre kind of like put it out themselves. It was not really something that manga publishers were interested in publishing, but as with Taiyo Matsumoto's Cats of the Louvre and this, we're seeing actual publishers, i.e. Viz, put out some of the longer form manga that these sorts of collaborations have produced. So, I really enjoyed this. I think it's such an interesting idea for tourist areas and like historically relevant and like collections of the arts and of the sciences, because it's not just Louvre who does this. There has been a collaboration with the British Museum as well, with a manga creator. But okay, so I didn't know anything about this going in. I knew that it was at the Louvre because I can tell, right? It's got the glass pyramid behind there. I knew it was the Urasawa work. I didn't have any idea of the Fujio Productions involvement. And it wasn't until I got the book and I was reading it, and then I looked at the cover, I was like, okay. And then I was reading, I'm like, oh, and I was wondering, and it wasn't until the end of the book, because it was like, who approached who in this situation? Because obviously, the Louvre's like, oh yes, we want you to write a manga about us, and choose an artist, and Ursa was like, okay, I'll do it, but I didn't know whether Fujio Productions approached him to include a very emblematic and classic and iconic character in this book, or whether he had the idea and then approached them to get permission to include that character. And then it wasn't until the end, I'm like, okay, it was probably the second one, right? So if you don't know anything about this, it's about a father-daughter. The father has run into some bad luck. His wife's left him. He's gone into debt, and he lost all of his money in a risky gamble in where he made rubber mask versions of the female Trump, who in this timeline is also running for presidency in the US and is treated as a joke in the lead up, but then wins. And then so all of these novelty masks that he made, because everyone assumed that she would lose, no longer have value, because she's like, oh, well, she's actually not being a crazy person and she might be a good president. I don't know. It's a weird setup. But anyway, he's in debt. He doesn't know what to do. And then one day, this father, he finds a note tied to the leg of a crow, or a raven. I'm not sure. Raven, probably. And he follows it and on there is the sign of dreams, which is this sign here. And he follows it to this society, which is an appreciation of French culture. And he gets caught up with the president there, the one who runs this culture club, who sends him to France and gets him involved in an art heist. He's trying to get him to steal a painting and put something in the Louvre and replace it and hold this painting for ransom in order to get ransom money so his problems will go away. Right? That's the basic premise. Okay. Cool. Fine. That's wonderful. The thing they don't tell you when you go into... Well, first of all, when I first read this, I was like, why did nobody tell me that there was a female Trump in this? Right? How did nobody mention this at all when this was licensed? Mainly because I don't suspect anyone knew, because nobody had read it at that point. But yes, female Trump. I'm going to flip through it. Right? So we have our characters, and there's our Trump character. There she is. Barbara Duncan or something. Beverly Duncan for president. So he's following this sign, and then he meets this mysterious guy whom you may recognize, which is why we had the Fujio Productions collaboration. If you don't know who this is, right? His name is Iami. And if you have watched, the way people now would know this character outside of Japan, because Japanese would know him, is if you watched the recent Osamatsu-san anime, because he is the character from Osamatsu-san and also Osamatsu-kun. Technically, he's kind of the main character of Osamatsu-kun, the comedy, manga, and anime series about identical sextuplets, and this weird con man who hangs out in their neighborhood as a bit of a pathetic loser, and all the other various people in their neighborhood. And basically in the original, the sextuplets, Osamatsu and his brothers, kind of foil all of Iami's get quick schemes. And Iami has always had like this love, this adoration for France. He calls it La France, and like claims that he knows all of these people and he's lived there and it's amazing and he truly is French and blah blah blah, yada yada. I yelled. I was so excited when I saw Iami, and they never call him that in this manga, but it's him. They even say it's him. They say at the end, hey guys, all of you Urasawa fans who picked up this book because you're an Urasawa fan, just by the way, yes, this character, this is who he is, and this is why he's important, and he's actually like one of the most iconic fictional characters in Japan. Okay, cool. It was such an interesting, like, oh my goodness, it kind of blew my mind, and this whole book like really galaxy brained me a lot of times. It was so enjoyable for a one and done. Because one of my biggest problems with Urasawa is that a lot of his longer series are just a little bit too long. Like, they just need to be tightened up a bit. I think he has, like, both Monster and what I've read of 20th Century Boys, I think there's just some stuff that could be cut out without losing anything in the story. And being confined to one volume like this, it made it tight, it made it succinct. Obviously, it was... I'm not sure if people who are not familiar with Osamatsu-kun or Osamatsu-san or Iami would have enjoyed it as much as I did, but oh my god, it was so enjoyable. And just like the whole female trope aspect, like, I don't know, there was so many aspects of this. I haven't even gotten to the firefighters or the vuvuzelas, or there's so much stuff in here, guys, and it's really solid. It's really decent, like really, really strong little book. Yeah, I think if you're an Urasawa fan, this might not be like what you expected whatsoever. It's honestly, aside from Pluto, probably my favorite of what he's done. It's just that effective. I loved it. It was an absolute experience, and I just enjoyed every moment of it. And if you're a fan of Urasawa, I expect you're picking this up anyway, but I don't know if you'll enjoy it for the same reasons you would enjoy every other Urasawa work. I would say if you're a fun, loving, crazy hijinks loving, cool, like, inside joke, like, galaxy brain, like, oh my god, what the, literally you don't know can't predict what's gonna happen. Yeah, check this one out. And okay, like, I did, it's on the cover. How did I not know? How did nobody mention that until review copies were going out? Oh my gosh, Urasawa, how did you manage to pull off the perfect heist of my expectations? I don't know, man, it's good. Read it. Next, we have another Viz title, another signature edition. This is the third volume, most recent English volume of Yuji Kaku's Hell's Paradise, Jigoku Raku. I love this series. I am up to date with it on Manga Plus. It's also available up to date on the Shonen Jump website if you have the app, or if you have the membership, I should say. It's not on the app because it's too violent, too much nudity. It's a mature title, that's for sure. But I love it. It's really great. I've heard people kind of compare it to Tokyo Ghoul, I guess, in art style and likable characters. Which, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue that. This is the story. Okay. If you're not reading this yet, you probably want to give it a miss if you're not a fan of, like, action, violence, outright nudity, it can get pretty, like, graphically violent. If you're just not a fan of any of that, this is not for you. If you love all of that, check this one out. It's also got some really crazy, eerie, weird body horror in a natural style, like natural body horror, i.e. merging with plants and just really unsettling looking stuff. Also, found family. Found family and friendship. Not in a Shonen Jump friendship saves the day, but in hey, we're all in this terrible situation and we all gotta try to survive. And actually, maybe, although I'm a death row criminal, I'm not actually the worst person here. Yeah. Friendship. I love this series a lot. And it feels like, in the manga currently, where it feels like it's wrapping up, it's heading towards its ending point, which is good. I think, like with all good series, I think 10 to 15 volumes tends to do the job. I think it's at 13 or so shouldn't run too much longer. But this is a story of a death row criminal ex-ninja assassin called Gabimaru, who also goes by Gabimaru the Immortal or the Unkillable, and who was sentenced to death row, but despite being executed multiple times, did not die because you're just that good. He is given the second chance at life if he is able to retrieve in a death row inmates battle royale this elixir of life on a weird, creepy island where nobody has returned with nobody has ever returned, especially not with their sanity. Anyone who has basically just died and been consumed by the craziness of this island. But they know that there's the elixir of immortality there, and so they are sent there to get it for the shogun or the emperor or someone. I can't remember exactly who. Anyway, with all of these death row inmates, that's the word I'm looking for, they, in order to prevent them from just like running off and not doing their job and causing like escaping and, you know, whatever else, they are accompanied. Each criminal is assigned a swordsman, a master swordsman from a particular sword school in order to behead them immediately if they do anything bad, basically. So it's this group of swordsmen and women, men and women, and these criminals, again, men and women, who are all on this island trying to get this flask of immortality, this elixir, in order to gain their freedom, because they all have reasons to want to live their life, have a second chance. And Gabimaru's is because he wants to live a quiet, peaceful, lovely life with his wife. And that, aww, he's such a good boy. Yeah, Gabimaru is really likable, despite being like this badass assassin who can survive anything and kill without flinching or whatever. He's actually, you know, deep down, not actually a bad guy. He just wants to, he's a product of his environment, and he wants to leave that behind and live a quiet life with his wife, who is the only like normalcy and love and affection he ever had in his life. So yeah, we also have, and his swordswoman who was assigned to him is Sagiri. She's the daughter of the sword, like the master at the sword school. And yeah, so she has like high expectations of taking over whatever. And it's really, their friendship is really great. A lot of the other criminal swordsmen relationships are really interesting to watch and kind of surprising, maybe. I don't think people will necessarily be able to predict who is gonna be surviving this battle royale and who isn't, and how things are gonna play out, how factions develop, and who is actually producing this elixir. What is actually going on this island? The mystery that is there. It's great. I love it. It's action-packed. It's violent. It's creepy, but it's got a lot of heart. It's got a lot of heart, and I love these characters. So, yeah, Hell's Paradise, Jigoku Raku. Definitely recommend it. If you read the first volume, or however many volumes you buy, be sure to, and you can't wait, be sure to check it out on the Shonen Jump website if you're in the US especially. I think, or English-speaking territories, I think it's still on Manga Plus for the entirety of the series. In other regions, it's not in English-speaking regions because crossover, but it is still being serialized there, so you can read the latest chapters, but there's a gap on Manga Plus if you're in like the US or UK or Australia. But anyway, Hell's Paradise. Read it. It's great. Super, super excited when this was announced as a print license. So thank you, Viz. So next, I finished a title. This is another Viz release, and this is Ran and the Grey World, volumes 5 to 7. So if you're not familiar with this series, I wanted to wait until the end to pick up the volumes because I enjoy this series a lot for various reasons. I think Akire has a real great imagination. I really like the family dynamics and friendship dynamics throughout the series. And it's really magical. I think there's a lot to really enjoy with this series. But throughout the series, there is a inappropriate relationship between our main character Ran and a much older male character who, admittedly, in the beginning of the story, I don't know if the entirety of the story, but when he meets her, he does think she's older than she is, but it's still not appropriate. And I was hesitant as to like how that aspect was going to play out because I'd heard pretty negative things about that aspect before it was licensed even, and then when it was licensed, people were discussing it, and I was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this, but I do like Akire, and I wanted to support her work. And throughout the first 4 volumes, I was still like teetering because I wasn't sure whether or not I was like how the story was going to handle that aspect of the relationship between this 10-year-old girl who makes herself look like an 18-year-old or whatever, or 16, 18-year-old, and an adult, a man in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. Like, I was not here for it, right? And I was like, oh my God, like, do not do this to me, right? And I'm not going to say that it doesn't have aspects of that, because it does. But I will say that Akire did not betray me, and it ended in a wonderful way, and I love the ending, and really the whole last arc where he's the villain and like certain stuff happens is really good. And it's like, people who've watched it a long time know that I'm not a fan of like minor and adult relationships, age gap relationships, where I'm not a fan of age gap relationships generally, dependent on how it's portrayed, but generally, with one big exception being a Bride story, I'm not a fan of relationships between a legal adult and a minor, right? Especially the way it's portrayed in a lot of seinen and shoujo manga, or even josei manga. Just not here for it. Okay, cool, fine. No judgment if you are, but that's not my thing. And this did have that, and I was like, Ire sensei, why you do this to me, right? But the way it was handled and the whole conclusion, the whole lead up to the series ending was really, really, really good. And I was really happy at how all of the characters, like all of that worked out. And even the relationship between this adult and Ran was more nuanced and complicated than, from her perspective, it was a lot more innocent. And like as an adult, you know that it wasn't for him. Like he was in love with her. And that's inappropriate, but it's done. It doesn't end with them together. I'm going to preface this whole thing with that. Like they don't end up together. If that's what you're worried about, that's not how the story ends, and there's no possibility of them ending up together either. You don't have to worry about that. It's done and dusted. In saying that, like, that was never the reason I read these books. It was never the reason I enjoyed this story. I really liked her family. I really liked her whole antics at school, her relationship with her parents and her brother, and her slowly making friends, both with quote-unquote normal humans and other sorcerers. And Ran growing up and realizing that the whole story, like the story starts with her as a little girl wishing so much to be a beautiful, older, accomplished person like her mother. She wanted to be like her mother, and she wanted to grow up quicker so that she could be her mother, right? And the whole process of this, the whole story of this manga is about that process of learning that when you are a kid, you do want to grow up and do things and be an adult, and it's not until you have grown up and you are an adult that you realize that the important things that adults do are much more different than what kids think are important for adults, right? And it shows that aspect so well. It's done so well. The themes are strong in this one. And I think, again, it's when we talk about the irresponsible or the uncomfortable, inappropriate relationship between Bran, who is a little girl who wants to be an adult and like be grown up and do all this stuff, and her affection and love, quote unquote, for this guy who is an actual adult is very in line with how kids see adult relationships and see being grown up is, right? It within the rationale of a child, it makes sense. When you look at it from the perspective of, as an adult, like, oh my god, no, send that person to jail. But even, yeah, but it's not quite as cut and dry as that, because ultimately I don't think that, what is his name? I can't even remember. Oh my god, where is it? Otoro. But by the end, I think also Otoro realizes that his love isn't inherent, like, it's a different sort of love. Like, we talk about the six types of love, right? And I don't inherently think that he was in love with her in the same sense that we see as in romance manga. Anyway, I'm not trying to rationalize this relationship because I didn't like it, and it was the most uncomfortable part of the early parts of the manga. But when looked as a whole, when you've read the whole story and you think recursively on it, it has a purpose. It's done well, and I think it does play into the whole point of what the manga is trying to say. But if you don't want to read it because it does have that aspect, that is totally understandable, and I get that. Like, I get it. But in saying that, I really liked the ending of this. I'm really happy that I've finished it, and I read all the last 3 volumes all at once, and it was a great time. Very satisfying. Volume 6 and 7 especially was great. Also, okay, the volume 7 is much thicker, as you can see. And that's not because necessarily there's a lot more chapters, but because the first like 100 pages, where all of the characters get these like intros with their adult version, like their grown-up version and their kid version for everyone. And then like who they are, what they do, their role in the story. Look. I was like, what the? Oh, cool. Also, like all of these adults, a lot of them are such like grimy little, look at it, they're just like children what were you doing in your youth? And it was kind of a fun little extra, because obviously a large part of this manga is about kids and adult, like wanting to be their grown-up counterparts. Also, this storyline was great. And then we have some extra bonus chapters that are like prequels or like side chapters to the actual story. Volume 7 is my favorite. I'm not going to show the ending because I want people to read it, but it is great. And Akihire's artwork is beautiful, magical. If you like, again, sort of magical, supernatural stuff, and you like Akihire and Kawamori stuff, then I would say give this one a shot. Maybe read it through your library if you're not convinced that you'll want it in your personal collection, but it is worth the read, and I think as a completed product, it is stronger than each individual volume. Next, we have another concluding volume for another Viz manga, and this is a hardcover manga, which is exciting. So this is the third volume of The Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umez. This is the final omnibus volume that collects the 11-volume series. This is This is my type of horror manga, right? I love Umez. I'm personally a much larger fan of his comparatively to something like Junji Ito. And man, look at how good this is. Okay, so if you don't know anything about The Drifting Classroom, it is a classic horror manga, obviously, that features a class of grade school students, elementary students, who are sunk into this giant sinkhole, which kind of leaves them in an alternate dimension where they're the only thing there, and it's really bizarre and monsters, and there's no escape. And it's very Lord of the Flies-esque, but rather than where the kids who are literal children going crazy and all of that, it's very often it's the teachers who initially snap, who are the ones who go into panic, who start attacking people out of nowhere, who are trying to escape from the situation, whereas the kids are more willing to be cooperative and try to get out of this situation, but there's still gross and creepy and mysterious and weird, horrific things happening to them and their classmates and the world outside. Meanwhile, the actual the world, they know that this classroom is missing. They see this sinkhole. They're like, holy shit, our kids are down there. And they're trying to see if there's a way to rescue them. And I'm not going to tell you what happens because I think everyone should read this. People may not like this because of the older style. I think it came out in the 60s. I can't remember. But it is it's not a modern manga, but Umez is one of the greats when we're talking about horror, and it's so exciting to see his stuff back in print, especially The Drifting Classroom, because it is very influential and just wonderful. there's a lot of references to this series in other series that you may not even realize. The D. Gray Man in one of the extras has an artistic homage to Drifting Classroom. Something else recently I read did as well. And I was like, hey, look, Drifting Classroom. And so it's had a huge impact on the manga industry just in general, but especially horror manga. If you're a fan of Ito, this is like foundational to his stuff. So you owe it to yourself to at least give it a try. And these beautiful omnibus editions are just the way to do it. They are so well put together. And I'm again really happy that Viz has taken the opportunity to put this series back in print, because it's one that I had read via the singles through my library, and by the time I was wanting to pick it up in print, the singles were very out of print. So having this relicense, having this reprint from them is really, really cool, really wonderful, and I would expect have more interest, because horror manga is also like much more popular. We see so much Ito stuff, but we're also seeing some of the Lovecraft adaptations and just other odds and ends. Horror is a much more approachable genre in manga than it ever has been, and that's a great thing. So I'm glad these series, and this series in particular, is getting a second chance. More hardcover manga, but this time completely different genre, but still classic in its own right. We have Rose of Versailles by volumes 2 and 3 by Ryoko Ikeda. Oh my goodness. I love this series. This is the classic shoujo historical romance fiction about Lady Oscar and Marie Antoinette and the French court and French society in pre and during revolutionary France. Lady Oscar is one of the imperial guards, knights of the Dauphine, and the queen and all that. But there's also revolution afoot, and perhaps revolution is what France needs. This is by far one of the most influential, impactful, amazing, brilliant manga of all time. Ikeda, and most notably her creation, Lady Oscar, is iconic. Like, Oscar is iconic, and this manga still to this day holds up super duper well. This is classic 70s shoujo, part of the classic or historical fiction movement, classic literature movement that was happening in the 70s in shoujo manga. And similarly to the Drifting Classroom, even if you've never heard of this series or never watched the anime or read the manga, you have come across this series. You have come across series referencing this series directly or being directly influenced by this series without even knowing it. It is everywhere, and it is foundational to so many tropes, to so many just artistic choices as well. And yeah, as I said, Lady Oscar, the cross-dressing, bisexual, amazing queen heroine of the story. I say queen as in like the modern day idea of queen, not the monarch, is just amazing and the best character ever. So I will hear no arguments against that. There's going to be 5 volumes in all. As you can see, it says 3 of 5 here. The 4th and 5th are already available for pre-order, so I gotta jump on that because I need to buy them. And I think there's a very real possibility that the 5th volume is going to be markedly shorter than the others, but that's not a complaint. But yeah, again, this is sort of regardless of your general tastes, your usual reading habits. If you're wanting to know more about manga history of some of the titles that literally like reinvented and impacted manga and Japanese society and media to this day, you need to be reading Rose of Versailles. I bitched about it for 5 years, but Udon finally brought the series out, and their editions are gorgeous. Obviously, these hardcovers, it's archival quality paper, color pages, and the translation is phenomenal. So yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to finally have these books in hand, and they are some of the loveliest in my collection, which is saying a lot because I have some very lovely books in my collection. And it's really the perfect release for any fan and anyone who is waiting for this series. But yeah, Rose of Versailles. I don't know like how to even sell it more than I can. Like, oh, this came out in the 70s and it is still like the Takurozaku shows are still going. It's still like women will still say that this is their favorite shoujo manga ever, and for good reason. Rose of Versailles is amazing. And it's so nice to finally have it in English because we've never had an English release before, and it was kind of seen as one of those titles that would never get an English release because it is so I guess expectedly high. Like there's a very high expectation on the Japanese side for sales and so licensing fees and things like that. And I don't know how Udon did it, but they did, and I am forever grateful. Thank you, Udon. Just maybe next time you license something that I want, don't take 5 years because that was not fun. And I'm still waiting on Sugar Sugar Rune. Please give me that one. Okay, that's all my complaints about Udon out of the way. But yeah, pick up these. They are worth your money. Somebody say influential creators and super thick books. I know I did, and thus we have the last 3 volumes of Showa, History of Japan by Shigeru Mizuki. This is 1939 to 1944, so obviously talking about war era Japan. We have 1944 to 1953, which is post-war, really the end of the war and post-war. And then 53 to 89, which is, well, post-war and also like the bubble, the economic growth period of Japan after the war. Shigeru Mizuki, for those who don't know, is the creator of Gegege no Kitoro, one of the first yokai manga. He basically invented yokai manga, and Showa is his personal documentation of the Showa period. Oh my gosh, where's Kitaro? I saw him. Oh, so close and yet so far. But so, yeah. It documents basically how the history of Japan during the Showa period. If you're not familiar, Showa is from 1926 to 1989. The period of when the emperor was in charge. That's how they organize these sorts of eras, and is the longest era in Japanese history. And obviously one of huge change, had a very major war in which Japan was very directly involved. And post-war, Japan's society and development and everything else was also hugely changing. Like, if you look at 1989 comparatively to 1926, that is a whole lot of change. Just globally, everything changed. And so it is Mizuki's attempt at recounting that period. He was, for those who aren't familiar, he was a soldier during the war. He was stationed in Papua New Guinea, and after that, he was very anti-war. A lot of his manga is about the atrocity of war and Japan's direct involvement with those atrocities, which is very unlike a lot of Japanese depictions of World War II. But if you're a history nerd and you want to read about the Showa period from the Japanese perspective, but a clear-headed, relatively unbiased perspective, then definitely check out Mizuki, and in particular these books, because they are well worth reading. I think there's something just so inherently interesting about a first-hand example coming from someone who lived through all of this. Mizuki was 93 when he died, and was a mangaka for a majority of his life. As I said, he created Gege no Kitaro, which is, again, if we're talking about influential manga, that, Kitaro, right there. So really a living legend in his time, and still beloved to this day, and such a outspoken anti-war advocate, who had seen the atrocities, had lived them, and knew what was going on. And recognizing that, of course, like, it's not inherently the foot soldiers of the army who are the ones responsible, but the ones who are much higher up the chain and in government who are the real villains, right? And and as even when he was younger, he was definitely the odd one out. He was never uber nationalist. He was never had the pride of his country that was expected of him, even before the war. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see an insider's perspective from someone who really was kind of an outsider from his peers and the general society. But yeah, as someone who really enjoys history, who loves Mizuki, I've read this one because my library had this, and I knew that I'd enjoy it, and I've had the first one for a while, which is 26 to 38. So I've been meaning to pick these up, and finally got them. Like, I think they went on sale on Amazon, so I finally jumped on them, and I haven't actually gotten around to reading them just because I haven't had the time. I've had all of this other stuff that I've been talking about to read. And so definitely it's not a series for everyone, but if you're interested in Mizuki, in Japanese history, check this one out. That's not all for Mizuki. I have another Jonin Quarterly book about his stuff, and that is Nononba. So this is, I found this new retail from a local store, similar to Inuboku SS, because this is a hugely out of print title. Like, this goes for crazy prices. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But I found it for retail price locally, so I bought it. I was like, hell yes, take my money. So this is basically a retelling, kind of a autobiography of Mizuki in his youth, and the woman who taught him all about yokai and told him all the stories, which obviously had great influence on him and impacted him and how the stories he wanted to tell and influenced his future creations with Kitaro, and how he thought about the regular world and the unreal elements that may live within it. So it was a lovely grandmotherly woman, a professional prayer. So you would, back in the day, you'd hire old women to basically sit beside the sickly and the dying to pray over them, to hope for their healing or their safe passage to the afterworld. That's obviously not a job that exists anymore. And she was always the one to tell him about all of the yokai and warn him not to do bad things, because, you know, all of these monsters were watching him, and there's more than what meets the eye. And also it talks about his childhood growing up in Totori and very superstitious periods, and just like how small towns worked and the inequalities and the arguments between children and the inequalities between adults and children. Look at him. Wasn't he such a sweet looking guy? No. Honestly, legend. Love him. But yeah, Non-Ba was really great. Really solid little book. I really liked it. Very, very music-y. He has such a humor and a self-aware nature to his own flaws, but takes it in stride, and he knows that, you know, he doesn't take anyone too seriously, including himself, and it's really refreshing to see that from a mangaka, especially a mangaka of his era. And I just love his work ethic. He refused to ever miss 8 hours of sleep. He refused to not live his life under the expectation of just making more manga and being a prolific creator. And of all of his peers, all of the other mangaka that were creating when he outlived them all. He had the happiest life, and he managed to create so many interesting and wonderful and impactful stories later on in his life. And that really is, like, in my opinion, the best part of his story. It didn't end, like, it wasn't a youthful achievement, and his life didn't end after surviving war and losing an arm. In fact, it was the beginning of his whole career. And going through something so traumatic as that doesn't mean you can't get better from that, and you can't take those experiences and create something hopeful and wonderful. And the fact that he always had such a love for the unusual, the stories, the ghosts, the yokai, is just, I love it. I love it. Yeah, anyway, I'm going to stop gushing about Mizuki, but I literally could for days. Check out his stuff. Maybe not this one, but if you are wanting more of his more supernatural stuff, I highly recommend the Drawing Quarterly releases of Kitaro. There's 7 volumes of those in all, and those collect pretty much all of the most important stories of that series. There's also other things here and there, but a lot of his other stuff that we've seen is more his serious historical anti-war stuff. So yeah, Mizuki is amazing. Non-Ba was a great time. Loved it. And be sure to read his work, because it's inspiring and fun and quirky, just like the man himself. So now we're going to talk about BL. Just completely change tactics here. But in saying that, still a supernatural element to this. Still some ghosts going on. But this is a manhwa from Net Comics. I know I don't pick up a lot of manhwa, and I know a lot of people don't really know about netcomics' stuff. But this is one of their BL titles called Prince Bari, volumes 3 and 4 by Solanine and Maki. So this is the story of, So this is the story of Johan, this guy here, who is a fake spiritualist, like fortune teller, spiritual guide, whatever you want to call him, who basically just, maybe cynical to say this, but like a lot of fortune tellers or mediums or whatever, he just preemptively researches his clients on social media, tells them what they want to know or what they want to hear in regards to their relationship, their business, their money situation, whatever it may be that they're coming to him for advice for. And pretends to like he has spiritual knowledge. But despite this, he does actually he can see one ghost, which is this kid here called Donga, who he's been able to see his whole life and has been his best friend and like closest companion through his whole life, who sometimes does actually like help him have a vision or like tell people good advice, right? One day, the handsome CEO of a tech industry, Yunsung, this guy, comes for advice, comes as a client to Johan's business, right? And because he's like, oh, I'm having problems, but won't admit that there's another ghost, this guy, what's his name? Chunho, which he can see, and Johan can see. Both of these men can see this ghost who's just like, I'm amazing, I'm grumpy, I'm an old guy. And so they don't know and he's being like haunted or possessed or whatever by this ghost, right? Okay. So Johan doesn't know how to like fix this. And so he requests that the CEO, this guy, starts to live with him full time, basically, so he can figure out like how to expel him, how he may be able to exorcise this spirit, this unwanted spirit, and thus starts their domestic life, living together and sleeping in the same bed and sleeping in each other's arms in a totally not gay way until it is a gay way. And then, so this particular volume, we finally get some outright development of the relationship between our two human characters. It's really sweet. If you like fluffy, soft, like domestic stories about just a couple living in a house together, then absolutely read this book. Okay, this is sweet and wonderful. Obviously manhwa, it's read like a quote-unquote normal English book, so this isn't flipped, this is just how manhwa is. And then, but also these two spirits that are haunting both of these men or inhabiting the spaces of these men may also have a history together, may have a past, they may know each other, but Chunho, that's his name, I keep forgetting, doesn't have any memories from before he became like a heavenly beast, and thus Donga is the only one remembering their time together, and it's heartbreaking, and he feels betrayed and all this, that, whatever else. So yeah, we got it's pretty good. It's pretty good. If that sounds like your thing, then check it out. It's lovely. It's sweet and soft and cute and domestic with the supernatural twist. And yeah, I like it, and I think it's nice to see more stuff coming out from netcomics. I don't actively follow a lot of their titles, but This is one that I was waiting for, and then I didn't know that volume 3 and 4 had come out in January of this year until this month, because they didn't say anything about it. I follow their Twitter and they didn't even tweet about it. I've been waiting for these books for months. I didn't think they had been released, but here I am in August of this year when I could have been reading these in January of this year. Anyway, Prince Barry, read it. It's great. A lot of fun. Okay, now we get to some like Sublime stuff. All the rest is Sublime stuff. First of all is volumes 1 and 2 of Coyote by Ranmaru Zarya, who also has another title in print, Liquor and Cigarettes, which I enjoyed a lot. This is a werewolf romance. Yeah, so supernatural. Zarya, oh my god, Zarya, damn girl, her artwork is phenomenal. She also has other titles coming up. The Birds of Shangri-La, most notably. I've also read Void, which is digital only because it is too spicy for print. And it's too spicy for Amazon, so you can only buy it from their website digitally. So this is the story of a society in modern day in which there are hidden werewolves amongst people who are actively being hunted by a mafia group. One of these werewolves, called Coyote, meets a pianist in a bar, in a downstairs club, and they're quite drawn to each other, and then he tries to distance himself from this mysterious man, but it's too late. He already cares about him. And then, oh no, he's a werewolf and it's the full moon. And so he has to go. He's in heat because that's something that happens in this world with these werewolves. I don't know about the transformation thing. I'm pretty sure it's like transformation at will. It's different from like normal traditional werewolf stories, but the full moon, that's when we gotta bang, guys. And this pianist, this guy is like, you're a werewolf, aren't you? And he's like, what? And he's like, I will help you. How about I will sate your heat? And because he recognizes it, and he's like, no, but then yes. And then they spend his heat together, and then they spend his next heat together, and then they catch feel like they both are into each other. But then this pianist, like, he knows that he's a werewolf, and he's like, why does the guy I love, why is he a werewolf? Because he is the heir to the mafia family that's trying to hunt down and expose werewolves. And you're like, oh no, it's Romeo and Juliet, but with gay werewolves. Like, it's good. It's good. I'm looking forward to volume 3. Volume 2 left on a big cliffhanger. I'm going to open this up just to show you the art, because it's good. I mean, it's beautiful. Look at that. Damn. But it is also really explicit, which is not a complaint, but it's also really explicit. So who knows? I mean, the color pages are great as well. Beautiful. Beautiful. Anyway, let's take this off screen so we're not surprising people with dicks. There we go. And there is a lot of explicit scenes, which is, again, not a complaint. Just be forewarned. But also, there's like a plot. There's like actual werewolf mafia fighting plot, intrigue, larger mystery. So if that's your thing, then jump on it. It's got elements of it. It's almost Amigaverse, not quite there. Well, I mean, Amigaverse was born from werewolf fan fiction, tropes and stuff, but it has actually, like, they're werewolves, so some of the characters can actually transform into into wolves. But if you're a fan of a Megaverse and you're sad that we don't have any in print yet, although one was just announced for print, Josei, so het couple, interestingly. But if you're sad that we don't have any Omegaverse BL in print, Coyote, I think, will satisfy a majority of that itch. I don't think you have too much to complain about if you pick this one up. Yeah, it's spicy, and Zari is great. Really looking forward to her next work, Birds of Shangri-La. Really looking forward to a lot of Sublime's works, because they love to expose me for the filthy degenerate that I am. But hopefully you'll understand, because you're also filthy degenerates. That's fine. Nah, Coyote's good, and looking forward to Volume 3, which I don't think comes out till next year. I don't know, January next year or something. What a wait, but it's good. Good. I took a second to figure out which flavor of trash I wanted to jump onto next. But I think I'm going to start with The World's Greatest First Love, Volume 13 by Shungiku Nakamura. As always, this is the most recent volume of this series. Actually, this one focuses a lot on Ritsu and his backstory, his time in England, which is fine. I'm like, oh my god, this is it is a dangerous game to be flipping through BL on camera. Needless to say, this is like, okay, so I've said this before. I don't particularly like Nakamura's other work. I actively hate Junjo Romantica. Not a fan of it. And also Hybrid Child is weird. I'm just not, like, into it. World's Greatest First Love, it has its problems. It sticks to the tropes. I fully admit that, and I say this literally every time I've had a volume, so this is the 13th time. But I still got a soft spot for it. I'm like, it may be trash, but it's my trash. So this, if you're not familiar, this is the story of Ritsu Onodera, who in middle school confessed to his secret crush, a older boy, one of his senpai, and they started a relationship, but very quickly there was a misunderstanding, and which made both of them think that the other didn't care about them and that their love wasn't real or whatever. They'd only been dating like a week. They're middle schoolers, am I right though? So anyway, it like broke Ritsu's heart. It was his first love, and it soured him to the idea of love, just entirely. Basically entirely. So much so he ran away for high school in England and was like, I'm going to just have a fresh start. Anyway, he comes back to Japan and is working for his family's publishing company as an editor. He loves books, he loves literature, and was working with some of his favorite authors, but realized that all of his coworkers were like saying that he was writing on the coattails of his parents' name and he hadn't earned his place, which he had. Like, he had worked to be where he was. Anyway, so in an act of defiance and to prove them wrong, he quit his family's publishing company and got employed at a rival company. But unfortunately, they didn't have a spot open in the literature department. So he was assigned shoujo manga, to which he has no, like, experience with. He's never read manga, especially not shoujo manga. And because he has so many hang-ups about romance, he doesn't think he's well suited to writing about or editing stories about love, and most notably first love, because his first love was a trash fire. But, and then this is the additional thing, his boss, the head editor at the shoujo manga magazine, is the boy he was in love with 10 years ago. And so they reunite, and they don't really initially even realize that it's the other until they do. And his boss is like, I've always loved you. I always wanted the opportunity to see you again, and this time we can make it work. I know you love me. What went wrong with us? And then he realizes it was a misunderstanding. Like, the whole thing was a misunderstanding. He's like, that's so stupid. We should just be together because we obviously care about each other. And thus, their relationship starts again, pretty much immediately. But Ritsu, spurned as he was and as broken as his heart has been, will not admit that he truly loves his senpai / his boss. And so is kind of holding out on admitting his feelings and just being true to himself and to the relationship. It's quite tropey and but I'm a sucker for second chance romances. I'm a sucker for, I don't want to say childhood friends to lovers, because that's not what I am a sucker for that. That's not what this trope is, but I'm a sucker for second chance. We didn't, when we were younger, we weren't mature enough. We didn't know what we were doing. And now we've grown as people and we're coming back. And in real life, I'm like, nah, cut toxicity out of your life. That's unfair. There are people who have made relationships work the second time, but not something I'm into in real life, but fiction, yes. Also, the series doesn't, okay. And then, so in the manga, we have a secondary couple, because there's a franchise, there's light novels and stuff as well. But in the other main couple in the series is Kisa, who is one of the other editors at the shoujo manga magazine, one of Ritsu's contemporaries, and is a 30-year-old baby-face looking gay man who, up until now, at 30, has basically just slept around. He's a sucker for a pretty face, but never really wanted to get into a relationship because he's been hurt too many times, basically, again, and has kind of some personal hang-ups about the men that he's interested in, because he's usually interested in looks first and foremost. He hasn't had very good boyfriends or partners, right? But he fell in love, he admires from afar one of the sellers, one of the clerks at a bookstore in which their manga is sold. So he kind of ran into him one day, saw him, beautiful boy, and kind of admired him from afar for a while. Stalker. Kisa, don't do that. You don't be a stalker. He doesn't stalk him. He just would watch him at work, which is stalkery, but he never followed him home or anything. And he knew I'm just getting my fill. I'm just admiring from afar. I'm not gonna do anything about this because he's so beautiful and so popular and all the girls love him, so I'm not gonna even get into it. But he realizes that this clerk has noticed him, and he kind of introduces himself, and anyway they end up dating because he's like, oh, you're amazing and I care about you too, and blah blah blah. And so now Kisa, despite being 30 and very sexually experienced, is now muddling through his first true love, real relationship, proper relationship at 30 with his young, energetic university art student boyfriend who cares about him a whole bunch, and they're sweet. They're really sweet. And those two have the largest age gap, which is my biggest issue with Nakamura's. I mean, there's a lot of issues with Nakamura's work, but Junjo Romantic has big age gaps, and a lot of them, and it's yikes. Kisa and Yukine they have the largest age gap, but they're both adults, so it's fine. That's fine. And they're a really cute couple, and I like them a lot. I like them more than Ritsu and I want to say Saga. I mean, that's kind of his name, but that's not what his name is. Oh my god. Takano-san. They're fine. I like them. I do, admittedly it's trash, but I like them. But I'm more into Kisa's relationship. Anyway, this particular volume, I've already talked 10 minutes about this already, but this particular volume, we see more about Ritsu's life in England and his relationship with his roommate, who he's just reconnected with and who now has feelings for him. Like, oh my god, there's romantic rivals. And then the Kisa Yukina story is about where Kisa meets his boyfriend's brother, and has for the first time been introduced as somebody's boyfriend, introduced to somebody's family as someone's boyfriend, and figuring out whether or not the family would be comfortable with that. And it's really good. It's really good. As I said, it's not high art by any means. It's trash, but it's my trash, and I really enjoy this probably more than I should admit. World's Greatest First Love. If it sounds like your thing, then you're probably reading it. And if you're not reading it yet, then you should give it a shot, because Nakamura is very well liked. I just don't like her other works. But she's popular for a reason. And this is by far her best title. We have for manga at least, we have the other trash that Sublime keeps exposing me. So this is Jealousy by Scarlet Vertigo. Jealousy Volume 1. It's an ongoing series. Okay. A little while ago, Sublime put out another Beriko title called Fourth Generation Head. I can't remember the character's name. About the son of a Yakuza who reunites with this guy who he met in childhood, and they start a relationship. But part of the drama of that was that because he was sent to this small town basically, or another city, to cool his head and to find his feet and whatever, by his father, because he was just being layabout at home or whatever. And so, but when he's in this new town, he's under the care or protection or whatever of the local branch of the family there. So whichever Yakuza is in charge of that area, which is this character. And this character in Fourth Generation Head, well, and this is a twisted, friggin' crazy bastard who is in love with the head of the Yakuza family, aka the main character of Fourth Generation's Head's father, and has been trying to basically get his attention and draw him back to him for years. And so when his son arrives in town, he takes the opportunity to basically just screw his son in an attempt to enrage this Yakuza guy in order for him to come here, and then hopefully, I don't know what he thought was going to happen. None of that, anyway, so there's a sort of very dubious consensual not wonderful, like, explicit content in that one, which is kind of par for the course for Yakuza BL. So if you're used to it, it's not that weird, and it's all consensual. Like, we all know it's consensual, but it's not like it's not the couple you're rooting for. And this also, there's a lot of explicit content, but I wouldn't say it's particularly like sexy, if that makes sense. So anyway, this is the villain character of that series. In the prequel, when he meets the head of the Yakuza, this guy who he basically like just becomes obsessed with and wants to be with and wants him to use him and all these other things. So anyway, the story starts, set in the 80s, and it starts with the Yakuza, this Yakuza guy and his right-hand man trying to collect a loan that they gave this very popular, prolific author. And when he doesn't show up at his house, they're searching around because they know he's there. They open into a secret room, and just at the moment that this author has shot himself in the head. And they're like, why did he kill himself? He had the money, because they knew he had the money. And he's like, oh, and on the bed, tied up is our main character, Rogi. Yeah, Uchirogi. Mid-coitus with this author, and he's like, oh yeah, nah, it's fine. We always played Russian roulette, and I guess he just fucking wasn't lucky this time. And like, you don't seem to be particularly upset that this, like, your lover just died and shot himself in the head in front of you. And he's like, I'm upset, but also, hey, you mind untying me? And like, here you go. Here's the money that he owed us, because like, we don't actually need it. We just want to see what's going on. And as his next of kin or whatever, as his lover, you deserve some of this. And he's like, no thanks, I don't want that. Anyway, so that's how they meet. This is how this odd couple literally meets. Anyway, and then so this guy tries to join the Yakuza because he wants to be close to the head of the Yakuza. And he's like, no, I don't want you joining this world. And he's like, no, but I want to. And so he hatches a plan that he will seduce like one of the other officers in the Yakuza, who's this closeted old guy, in a power play to gain trust and to gain like notoriety and take over that area, and then prove himself that he's worthy to join the Yakuza and he's useful, and again, try to like strong arm his way into being close to this guy. And that doesn't, so there's a majority of the sex in this particular volume, at least, is not, it's not between like the Yakuza guy and our main character. It's between this old guy and him, or like, well, we don't actually see much of the author, that sexual element. And it's very flashback between the past and the present, because we also have him when he's older, the father, and he has to take in this like guy who basically threw himself in front of his car in a bid to get money. And like, I guess a weird little relationship is going to develop from there. So yeah. In saying that, despite not much of the sex being like, I guess, sexy. I mean, it's Scarlet Barrica, so it is sexy, but I don't know how many people want to see like someone who looks like their dad banging someone. That's a bit weird, but I will say that there is explicit scenes at the end, which again, dubious. Now, Yakuza mangas never. Oh my god! Yeah. Also, there's a very like sexual violence, like not. Ooh, yeah. Always know when you're going into Yakuza manga, it's gonna be fucked up, and it's not always gonna be sexy. But Scarlet Barraco, when it is sexy, it's really sexy. Like you're not gonna be disappointed. But yeah, like I really liked this book mainly because it's such an interesting look at such a twisted character and his mentality and his rationalization of everything. And although he was a villain in the original, and he's not a good person here, he's still a bad person with a twisted mentality and just like absolutely psychotic in a lot of ways. It's also really compelling. Like, it's just really interesting. If you like mess, this is mess. Yeah, this is not, this is not a title where I'm like, oh yeah, if you're wanting to get into the genre, you should pick this up. It's really sweet and wholesome and good gay representation. This isn't that. This knows what it wants to be. It wants to be sexy, and it wants to be messy drama with some fucked up characters, and that is exactly what it is. And you're like, oh my god. But honestly, like, if you're into other Yakuza BL, then I think you know what to expect. It's not the worst thing I've read. It doesn't have anything like, oh, I don't know. There's some it's hard to talk about like whether something is consensual or not when you have such twisted mindsets from both parties. Yeah, it's definitely not one I would recommend to anyone easily. But if this is your kind of trash, then get on it, because Scarlet Barraco does it well. And this is actually a really interesting character study, and for as much of like a bad, twisted psycho person that he is, Rogi is so compelling, and I'm really interested to see where this goes. Honestly, like, yeah. Jealousy is putting it lightly. I'm finished with manga, but I am not finished with the stuff I bought. So, I took the opportunity in last sales, or like clear out sales or whatever, from Right Stuff to pick up some of Tokyopop's old light novels that I was wanting to get and are very likely, well, I wanted to get them because I did want them. The first one being Gothic. Tokyopop actually managed to get 2 of these volumes out, but the second one is impossible to get because it was literally like when they were closing down. This is by Kazuki Sakuraba. This has a anime adaptation, as most people know, and this is kind of a Sherlock Holmes with a cute lollygoth character who can deduct solve mysteries across Europe where she lives. And our main character is Kazuya? Yeah, Kazuya. Oh my goodness. I haven't read this book yet. I have watched the show though, many a year ago, so that's my memory trying to work itself. But so Kazuya's recent transfer to this like prestigious school in Europe from Japan, obviously, and in the library, like this really big, interesting building, he meets our main character, Victoria. Not Victoria. It is, Victorique. That's, like French Victoria, who lives there, basically just lives there, and has a wonderful deductive mind, and they solve mysteries together. Basically, it, as I said, is Sherlock Holmes, but with Gothic Lolita as the main character, and a Japanese, just nice plain guy, Japanese Watson. I liked the show a lot for what it was. I still need to buy it on Blu-ray though. I used to own the Australian DVDs many a year ago. It's not brilliant. Even as a mystery show, it's not like out of this world or anything. But if you like Holmesian sort of mysteries and this kind of fake European setting, then check it out. This volume, I think, is still available on Rare Stuff. It's pretty cheap. I'm not sure how long. I think it's like 12 volumes in total in Japan. I can't remember. But obviously was not finished by Tokyo Pop. And it's one of their titles that is not likely to be relicensed, unfortunately. Maybe one day, but I'm not holding my breath necessarily. But yeah. I'm happy to have this one. Maybe one day I will be able to find volume 2, but I doubt it. Some more Tokyo Pop light novels from that same kind of like, just try to get whatever's in their clearance because I want this. And this one I think has a higher percent of being relicensed because it's hugely popular and very well loved in its small fan base. Which I think still has interest, especially considering how often the series is relicensed. Anime series adaptation is relicensed. And that is The 12 Kingdoms by Fuyumi Ono. This is volume 2. And then I have volume 4 as well, which is so much thicker. And as you can see, is also paperback versus hardcover. And then so we have... The second book is Sea of Wind. The fourth book, which I think is actually 4 and 5, is Skies of Dawn. Fuyumi Ono is also the novelist of Ghost Hunt and Ghost Hunt. I was going to say Shiki. I don't remember if that's correct. It doesn't matter. I know she did Ghost Hunt. So she does supernatural stuff, but also fantasy. And I love The 12 Kingdoms. It's my favorite isekai ever. I'm hoping that maybe one day we'll see a relicense of this series from J Novel. I hope in a similar vein to like the Full Metal Panic and Banner of the Stars and, whatever else they've put out, I can't remember. Relicensed wise. Oh, Slayers. This, I think, would be a great addition to their catalog. I think technically it might be ongoing, but it's not like super duper long. It's like 15 volumes or something, which when we're talking about J novel that's not long. And when we're talking about light novels in general, it's not long. This is a fantasy isekai about a teenage girl with bright red hair, Yoko, who is brought into this fantasy world where she is told that she will be queen, but not before she discovers all of the interesting political shifts within the country and the disparity between sort of the upper class and the lower class and the slave class within this society. She befriends a lot of unusual people. She also is isekai'd with some of her classmates, of which it's really interesting as well to see because that's not that common anymore, especially. This is good stuff, and I 100% recommend the anime adaptation because it is beautiful. And Yoko is a great character. I just really love the series a whole lot. And I hope one day we will see more of it. I need to hunt down a volume 1 and a volume 3 so I can finish, quote unquote, this collection of Tokyo Pop releases. But I'm also not holding out hope that I'll be able to find it. who knows? At least volume 1 I want to get, because that's obviously the beginning of Yoko's story. And to be honestly, it jumps around a lot, follows a lot of different characters, so it's not inherently necessary to read it in order, but it definitely wouldn't hurt to read it in order either. Again, I think that both of these books are available at Right Stuff if you're wanting to buy them, like I am, in a weird, like, to have them in hopes also if it doesn't get relicensed, then you have it in some capacity way. But I haven't read either of these, again, mainly because I've had other stuff to read, but also because, well, I don't have the first book, and I don't really want to start at the second or fourth, so I guess I'm just going to have to wait. But hey, J novel, if you want my money even more than you get, because you get a lot of my money, how about 12 Kingdoms? I would appreciate that. Thank you. Please and thank you. Finally, this is kind of a weird one, because technically it's not a light novel, but it is young adult fiction. It is a book series that got an anime adaptation, and it is one that the anime adaptation was pretty well liked for the few people who saw it back when it was legally released and streaming on Crunchyroll. It no longer is, unfortunately, and has never been licensed anywhere else. But this is a Simon & Schuster book? This is like an actual novel book release of the translated edition of Macmillan. Okay, this is a Macmillan book under their Henry Holt imprint of the Beast Player, aka Beast Player Eren, or Beastmaster Eren, which is what the anime is called. This is by Naoko Uehashi, and this book is the second one, just came out, and despite this book just being called The Beast Player, it actually contains 2 of the 4 novels released in Japanese, and the second book contains the 3rd and 4th of the novels released in Japanese. So the entire series is available in English, released. This, if you're not familiar with Beast Player Eren or Naoko Uehashi, you may be more familiar with her other series, which also was released. Some of it was released, the novelization, but the anime has been licensed and released a multitude of times, which is Moribito, which I love, adore that anime. Of the books that I've read of it, only 2 of the books of the 5 or 9 or something were released, sadly. The first book was great. That's the only one I've read. And I love her stuff. So her stuff is young adult fantasy, female protagonists, really interesting fantasy worlds. As I said, highly, highly recommend Moribito. And if you liked that, if you liked Beast Player Eren back in the day when it was on Crunchyroll, or however other way you may watch it, this is the original. This is the original series. This is the original story. It is available in its entirety in English, and I thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to pick it up sooner rather than later. It's about a young girl it's Ellen, Elin, in this book, in this translation. In the anime, it's Erin, Erin, so just the LR differentiation, whom was the daughter of a beast doctor who was charged for a crime that She killed these beasts that she was protecting. It's a fantasy world, so there's like these giant beasts that are very often used for war. Giant snake-like worms, or well, giant snake-like dragon things, and then other winged beasts and stuff, which can only be controlled by certain whistles, which have a very negative effect on these creatures. And her mother was never truly accepted in the town and the village where she was, because she was from like the outside traveling, like kind of Romani people. And so she has more knowledge on the natural world and how to look after these animals in a respectful way than people in the towns and cities who use them as an advantage in warfare. Anyway, her mother is executed when Ellen was 10. Ellen tries to rescue her, but ultimately her mother rescues her and helps her escape. And she's raised by a man who finds her and teaches her and notices that she's very in tune with the natural world and very in tune to the world around her. And so she decides that she wants to become a beast doctor, basically, like her mother was, but really in a way to understand these unusual creatures whom other people don't know and they don't know how to control. And she's hoping that she can find a better way than these whistles that seem to be doing more harm than good. It's very likable. It's quite slow. I mean, it is a YA stuff. Like, it's young fiction. I'd say it's maybe even middle grade, but there's a bit more violence than maybe you want. Well, I don't know. Middle grade fiction can get pretty violent. But I will say it was probably a smart idea to lump books together, because having read it, Volume 1 is a whole lot of setup. And Erin as a young girl and then it isn't until the second book that we really see more of her going out and trying to be this, understand the creatures around her and change society. And all there's political shifting, there's brewing warfare between two factions and all this other stuff. But yeah, it's a slow going series, because it's meant to be slice of life. You're meant to revel in that, like, the lore of the world more so than necessarily the events of the world. But if you're wanting more action in your fantasy, this is not the one for you. And I think that they were smart that they bundled books together, because I don't think the first book would have sold at all if it was just left as is, sadly to say. Yeah, as I said, this is by Nohoko Uehashi, the translation by Kathy Hirono. Great translation. It's a beautifully put together little book. It has a pretty clear breakdown. Each chapter has smaller, bits focusing on other characters. The other thing is that it does actually jump around perspectives quite a bit, because it has such a grand story that is being explained, but in a very leisurely style. And I can't wait to get the second book, because I had been... I was hoping that it would arrive to me already, but the store I bought it from didn't want to send it. Hasn't sent it out yet, weirdly. But yeah, so I think this came out last year, and I wasn't even aware that this had been released at all until I saw, I think it was Tristan Felix on the translator on Twitter talking about the second book being available. So yeah, thank you, thanks Tristan, I appreciate it. Yeah, I liked it, but it is kind of what you should expect for this series. Alrighty, yeah, check it out if that sounds like something you're interested, or if you have a young person in your life who likes fantasy and doesn't mind slower titles. It's a good little book. So that's everything that I got for this month. A whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of titles. I can't even fit all of the manga in this frame. Like you're not even. I haven't even put any of the Drawn and Quarterly stuff up here, so you can't even see it all. And you absolutely can't see any of the BL because that is way up the top. Yeah, lots of books, lots and lots of books. Finished some things, which was exciting. Started a couple things, which was also exciting. Some pretty solid one and dones. Lots, big mix. And of course, my desperate, like, please, I am showing interest in this series, maybe not from Tokyo Pop, but from anyone else with 12 Kingdoms and Gothic. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of these titles that I've talked about, whether you've read them, if you love them, hate them, whatever else. If you haven't even heard of them, I love reading your comments, as always. I do try to respond to as many as I can get. Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, I really appreciate if you'd subscribe. No obligation, of course, but I mean, if you liked it, maybe you want to watch more. That'd be cool. As always, the links to my Twitter is down below. I also just posted the most recent episode of my podcast I co-host with Ray from Whimsical Pictures, Read Right to Left, where we talk about manga. This month we were talking about single volumes. So, I mean, I had a couple of those in this pickup, so I think it's a pretty large topic. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there, some that people haven't even heard of. And next month we'll be focusing on Yuki Kamitani, one of my favorite mangaka ever. So give it a listen if you like manga and you're interested in our opinions and thoughts and a little bit of the history of manga as well. Otherwise, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.